Get ready.
Hello and welcome to another episode of This is Saturn. I am Liam Ashcroft and today we'll be looking at an accessory for the SEGA Saturn, that being the Action Replay 4M Auto cartridge. For those unfamiliar, Action Replay is a device available for just about every video game console, be it Mega Drive, Nintendo 64, but generally any console, it has one of these, even newer gen consoles. Often they simply act as cheat devices, allowing gamers access to a plethora of codes to either make a difficult game a tad easier or make otherwise impossible events take place within said game. However, the Action Replay devices of later console generations provided even more uses beyond a humble cheat device, and the SEGA Saturn's most popular Action Replay device, the 4M Auto, was one of these cases. The 4M Auto Action Replay acts as a cheat device, a save data utility, a RAM cartridge, and even disables region lock on your SEGA Saturn, meaning you can play games from Japan, which is very useful as I'll detail later on. All of this means that this one cartridge could in the long run save you plenty of money on extra backup cartridges for extra storage, as well as the RAM cartridges released exclusively in Japan. That said, these things can lean to the pricey side. If I recall, mine cost about 30 quid, which is roughly $50. So is it worth it? I initially bought the cart due to my intention of collecting just Japanese Saturn games, since in some cases they're much cheaper than the UK ones. However, buying a Japanese Saturn defeated the purpose of that. Sort of. The Action Replay doesn't just circumvent region lock for Japanese games, which means it's still useful for when I want to play my UK Saturn games on my Japanese system. I'll delve more into this later though. The Action Replay comes in a rather colourful box, and otherwise it's pretty basic with a simple plastic frame holding the mighty grey cartridge and a simple slip of A5 paper holding the instructions. Worth noting there were a few models of this particular Action Replay, a grey one, a black one, and also one which had an extension port in the top, which I assume you could use to connect to a computer to put more codes on the thing straight from a computer. As for the different aesthetics, basically just go for whichever one you want. The black one probably fits more with the UK and US Saturns, whereas the grey one fits nicer with the grey Japanese Saturn, which is why I got that one. The cartridge obviously goes into the cartridge slot at the top of the Saturn, and once it's in, you're ready to use the various features it provides. As mentioned, the cartridge disables region lock, which means you can play UK, US and Japanese games on the same SEGA Saturn. Another benefit to the region lock disable feature is that some Japanese versions of games were censored in Western countries or otherwise altered. For example, Fighting Vipers has the secret character Pepsi Man, but only in the Japanese version of the game. Another example is with Daytona USA Circuit Edition. I've read that the Japanese version held much closer to the style of the original arcade game as opposed to the more Sega Rally-esque Western release, and featured a couple of extra options. I can't actually confirm this because I don't have a copy of the game at the moment. Last Bronx actually came with an extra disc in Japan featuring extra stuff like a training mode that was more fleshed out than the Western releases. As such, no region lock means you can import these games and experience them as the developers intended, a definite plus in my book. One thing to note though, is on UK Saturns the audio sync on non-UK games is way off in places, as the 50Hz UK Saturn isn't meant to run 60Hz games. This isn't a huge issue and it only affects UK gamers, but it was actually a large reason I dropped a fair amount of money on a Japanese Saturn. Also, some PAL games were optimised to run at full 60Hz speed even on a UK Saturn, meaning playing them on a US or Japanese Saturn can throw the games off in timing. This actually affects quite a few games such as Tomb Raider and Sega Rally. There's a full list of these PAL optimised games in the description, so check it out before you buy UK Saturn games if you have a 60Hz console. For UK Saturn gamers, I'd actually recommend getting a 60Hz console rather than putting up with the audio desync. As is common for Action Replay devices, the cartridge also contains cheat codes for all manner of Saturn games, and for some games even has cheats for each individual region. But suddenly, panic! There's no codes for, say, Fighting Vipers! Well, not to worry, as you can easily add new games onto the cheats list and add codes for said games to the device. You'll have to look up the codes on the internet and enter them manually, but it's not a huge issue. One thing to keep in mind though is that of course cheats affect the way the game works, and sometimes this can have strange, odd or downright terrifying effects on the games. For example, I wanted to get the Sonic Into Dreams bonus game in Christmas nights a little bit quicker, so I went online, found codes for the Japanese version of the game, punched them into the action replay and boosted up the game. I used a cheat giving infinite blue chips so that I could progress to the present minigame after each level quicker. However, the cheat did more than affect my blue chip count. Textures and models flickered wildly to the point the boss of the stage repeatedly disappeared and reappeared in an erratic fashion. In the end, the cheat served its purpose, as sure enough I unlocked Sonic Into Dreams much quicker, but holy hell, seeing Knights glitch out like that was off-putting. Thankfully, not every game throws a fit with cheats active. I tested fighting Vipers with an invincibility cheat, and aside from an odd looking health bar, all worked fine. If you don't have cheats active, the games run as normal, so don't put this device off thinking it'll just fuck up your games, it really won't. The next use for this device is that it can be used as a RAM expansion cartridge for certain games such as X-Men vs Street Fighter and Real Bout Fatal Fury. The bad news is I lack any of the games that use a RAM card at the moment, but fret not as my colleague AJ Rosa covered them in an episode of his show My Life With SEGA, which you can find by clicking the link on screen. Anyway, as he briefly mentions in the video, the cartridge is compatible with both Capcom and SNK titles that took advantage of different RAM cartridges. This is handy as you don't have to swap out the cartridges as frequently, and since the Saturn's cart slot is supposedly quite easily damaged, this is a large benefit. One of the key reasons I bought one of these devices, however, is that it acts as a memory card, and a bloody huge one at that, at least compared to the Saturn's own internal memory. The Saturn has 510 blocks of internal memory with a normal CR2032 battery in it, whereas the cartridge offers 8,190 blocks. That's an insane increase and gives you plenty of room for all your save data. Moving data from the console to the cartridge is easy, though one slightly irritating thing to note is that the Saturn cannot read save data directly off the cartridge. So if I had my Sonic R save data on the cartridge, for example, I'd have to copy it over to the Saturn's internal memory to use it, then once I was done playing I could delete it off the Saturn's memory and just keep it on the cartridge until next time. This would be a hassle, but thankfully moving data around is painless. It literally takes a click of a button and bam, data moved. This makes it one of the strongest aspects of the cartridge besides the region lock disabling, and it's probably the main reason I'd recommend it. So overall, what do I think? Well, I can say without a doubt that this cartridge is a worthy investment. Again, I paid about $50 for mine and it was worth every penny. And in the long run it'll probably save you quite a bit. The last UK copy I saw online of Mega Man 8 for the Saturn was over £100, whereas I found a Japanese copy for a mere 25 quid. That's a huge saving. In addition, the huge amount of storage the thing provides means you won't have to splash out on additional backup cartridges, again saving you some cash in the long run. And of course, there's the cheats to entice you with new ways to try out your Saturn games, though I personally say you ought to beat the game legitimately before you delve into cheating. If you own a SEGA Saturn, I'd recommend one of these, though I wouldn't go as far as to call it essential for most Saturn users. However, if you're a die-hard Saturn fan, then one of these is absolutely essential due to the sheer amount of awesome stuff you can do with it, and for the sake of importing some ace Japan-only titles. That's all folks, I'm Liam Ashcroft and I'll see you on the next episode of This Is Saturn, where, as promised at Too Many Games Expo, I'll be looking at Burning Ranges.